Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the webinar of Low-Resource Languages, organized by GOBLIN Cost Action Task 1.3. We are delighted to have distinguished speakers joining us from different institutions and locations. Thank you for taking the time to be part of this discussion and share your knowledge, experience, and perspectives. We also extend our sincere thanks to our moderator, who will guide today's discussion and facilitate the question and answer session. We hope this webinar will provide valuable insights, encourage meaningful discussions, and inspire new ideas and collaborations. Before we begin, I would like to remind everyone that you are welcome to submit your questions throughout the chat throughout the webinar. After the first hour, we will open the Q&A to the audience, and we will do our best to address as many questions as time allows. Thank you once again for joining us. We hope you enjoy the session and find it informative and engaging. It is now our pleasure to introduce the panel members, starting from our moderator, John P. McCrae, who is an associate professor at the University of Galway, specializing in natural language processing and linked data technologies. His research heavily focuses on language research creation and computational support for historical, under-resourced, and endangered languages, such as Old Irish, Dravidian languages, and Manx, ranging from automatic term extraction and neural machine translation to code mixed sentiment analysis. As the lead developer of the Lexicon Model for Ontologies standard and grant holder coordinator for major projects, including IRC Laureate Award Cardamom and EU Horizon 2020 initiatives, he has published extensively across top venues like EMNLP, Calling, and LREC, while supervising numerous PhD researchers dedicated to advancing low-resource NLP. We'll now pass to introducing the panelists, starting in alphabetical order. To you.
First, Dagmar Grohmann. Dagmar Grohmann is associate professor at the University of Vienna and previously worked as postdoc at AAA CSIC in Barcelona and TU Dresden in Germany. Her research focuses on knowledge extraction from multilingual texts, including terminological concepts, systems, and cognitive building blocks, such as image schemas and conceptual metaphors. She also investigates socio-technical implications of LLMs, including gender bias beyond binary in machine translation and interaction of knowledge graphs with LLMs. In terms of low-resource languages, she was actively involved in creating the multilingual lexical semantic dataset called MultiLex, including Ibera, Lusovinian, and Albanian. Additionally, she is on the editorial board of the Semantic Web Journal of Applied Ontology, and Neurosymbolic Artificial Intelligence Journal.
Following, Vasilis Katsouros is a research director and director of the Institute for Language and Speech Processing, ILSP, at Athena Research Center. He holds a PhD in mathematical modeling and stochastic control, as well as a master in science in communications and signal processing from Imperial College London, and a master in engineering in electrical and computer engineering from National Technical University of Athens. He has led and coordinated numerous national and European research and innovation projects in the fields of artificial intelligence, machine learning, and digital signal processing. His work focuses on the analysis and understanding of complex multimodal data, including language, speech, images, video, and documents. He currently leads ILSP's strategic initiative on the development of open large language models for Greek, contributing to strengthening the presence of the Greek language and culture in the emerging AI ecosystem.
Our next panelist is Irem D. Lonac. He's an associate professor in the Department of Computer Science at KU Leuven in Belgium, researching and teaching natural language processing. She is the PI of Lagom NLP, a lab focusing on multilingual NLP. She is an active member of the Association for Computational Linguistics, ACL community, as an author, 40+ published papers, as well as a reviewer and a senior area chair. Previously, was a postdoc at the University of Copenhagen in Denmark and at KU Leuven in Belgium. She holds a PhD in computational linguistics from Uppsala University and MSc in Artificial Intelligence from University of Edinburgh, UK, and a BA and MA in the Languages and Literature from UC Leuven, Belgium.
Last but not least is Professor Dr. Axel Gonga, who is a full professor of data science at Paderborn University, where he leads the research group DICE. He's an internationally recognized researcher in knowledge graph, semantic technologies, neurosymbolic artificial intelligence, and trustworthy AI. His work significantly advanced the state-of-the-art in scalable, linked discovery, federated querying, and machine learning over structured knowledge. His research has produced widely adopted open-source software, numerous highly cited scientific publications, and practical technologies that bridge fundamental AI research and real-world applications. His current research focuses on developing neurosymbolic algorithms that combine formal reasoning with machine learning to create AI systems that are transparent, verifiable, and capable of human understandable reasoning. He has led numerous national and international research initiatives, and he has received over 30 national and international scientific awards recognizing his contributions to artificial intelligence, knowledge engineering, and semantic technologies. Welcome all. It is our honor to have you with us today. We pass the floor to John to start the webinar.
Okay, thank you for the kind introductions. So I'll lead off with my first question. So recently, of course, we've seen models being scaled larger and larger and this sort of hyperscaling of language models. And we are seeing that these are making these models perform better in under-resourced languages. So my first question is almost a bit of sort of devil's advocate. Like, is this all we need? Like, is scale all we need, or is there something else missing in terms of creating language technologies for under-resourced languages? Who would like to take that one?
I can start if I may.
Please go ahead.
I'll try to keep it short. I could talk about this for hours, but I think that the generally scale has actually not helped in any way the majority of languages in the world. And we've seen enormous progress, but and we've seen a lot of hype around multilingual NLP. But the situation for the majority of our languages has just stayed stable, and the gap is only widening. Why is that? Because scale requires data, right? And English is really an outlier in terms of data availability. When we look at the estimated 7,000 world languages, there's English really right there at the top, and then you have maybe quite a lot below it. You have maybe French, German, and then still an enormous gap with the majority of world languages. And the main progress that we've had for low resource languages has relied on cross-lingual transfer. And cross-lingual transfer can be useful for low resource languages which have a related language that is high resource. For example, a typical example would be Faroese, right? Faroese is very low resource, but it's quite related to the Scandinavian languages, which are higher resourced. So we've seen progress for languages such as Faroese, but for the majority of our languages, we have not seen any progress. And so I think scale is not the answer, because we don't have much data for a language like, for example, Amharic, which has its own distinct script. There's just no progress and no path to progress with scale the way I see it.
Okay, thank you. Some other comments on this question, Axel?
So allow me to agree and disagree at the same time. I fully agree in the sense of, if we don't have digital artifacts which represented a language, we have a problem when it comes to building large language models around them. Now, I totally agree that we have an outlier. We have this exponential distribution, and for most of the language, we barely have anything. But we've done some progress, even on languages that are underrepresented, not necessarily because they are related to languages that are high resource, but because they're related to enough other languages that we can actually use mixture of expert models to actually exploit these similarities to have a significantly higher frequency in the distribution of tokens which are relevant for the particular language. So it seems to me that, yes, we have outlier languages, but just having more of the languages out there digitalized and made available as artifacts for learning LLMs is already a step forward, even if they're not related to languages which are high frequency, because if they're related to other languages enough, mixture of expert models actually really do help there. Still, there is quite a bit. We have a paper which actually shows that. And there is a bit, there is a lot of effort that we still need to put in, though. There I totally agree.
Okay, good. Dagmar or Vasilis, do you want to come in on this? Or
yes, let me jump in and say that I will agree with Miriam that mainly the transfer is through cross-lingual mechanism from dominant languages to less resource languages. And actually, with the technicality, if it is mixture of expert or not, still it's a technicality. When you are talking about huge, go to trillion or go to billion or trillion models, even if you may have mixture of experts, but you do need quality data and the amount of data that is necessary to actually power and these models inherently the mechanism of learning the representations of the language and the culture of the language. So one thing is to how you encapsulate this in the learning mechanism when they start learning, from scratch, or you can do it with continuous pre-training when you pick up, say, one average or large model from the open class of open weight class of models, and you continue pre-training on your amount of data. However, doing so, you should be very careful of how you add knowledge from the new language, but not to miss knowledge from the other language. So in this particular case, it's very helpful if you have parallel data. So one aspect for not forgetting the forgetting factor of the model is to have to know the mixture of data from the original model and put a sufficient amount of data of the new language, and also have the cross-lingual aspect, and this will give you the ability of transfer learning, where you have this knowledge in your data, and keep also the cultural characteristics of the low resource language. So I think data is very important on this aspect. And one comment about the models that we see of the American companies, they become better in European language, for example, but they use our own data. So what is the question that Europe can give? We need some data sovereignty and provenance, and this can be done only through open weight large language models.
Dagmar, would you like to come in on this? Or
Sure, yeah, I agree completely that data is very important, but to answer the question specifically, I don't think that scaling is the answer to solve the low resource language problem, because as you were saying, you don't know exactly how the providers trained the models on which data. There's also this issue of starting out with an English subword tokenization and then expecting that to work for any language in the world. So I don't believe that scaling alone is the answer for all the problems, even though performance has been better. And apart from the subword tokenization issue or the vocabulary that's then stored in a model to begin with, we also have other issues that, there's kind of a competition going on between languages. If you throw too many languages in, and usually the low resource languages tend to use, and then you start quantizing because you still want to use the models in an environment where the community can use the models, which is kind of the target of low resource technologies, right? So you don't want to have those super large models. So I really don't think that that scaling is the answer.
Okay, good. So
John,
thank
if
you.
I may add,
Go ahead.
one aspect to the equation is also how you evaluate these models, because evaluation is very important. And for low resource language, you don't have enough evaluation data, benchmark data, for having, scientifically that these models are improving.
Yeah, great. And that actually brings me on to my second question. So obviously, I mean, you've all mentioned the lack of data for these languages, which is the key defining thing. Is it just that we need to get more textual resources, so we need more text coming into these languages, or are there other kinds of resources like evaluation or lexicographic resources perhaps that could be useful? So who'd like to? Mia?
I think the first thing is, sorry, I'm first again, but I just want to jump on something Vasilis just said. I think there's a huge crisis in evaluation in multilingual NLP, where the majority of data is translated English, right? You take English, then you translate it into a bunch of other languages, and then that's your gold standard. And that's really a problem. So I think evaluation data should be the top priority, because we have English biases in every step of the pipeline, and the architecture, because we first start building models for English, and then we don't even really adapt them to other languages. We just use them as is, with minor adaptations, and then we evaluate this using data that is heavily European centric, in terms of how many the languages that are actually used for evaluation, and English centric in the sense of using translated data. So evaluation data is, to me, a priority.
And if I may also jump in and say that evaluation data is very important, because, as Mina said, we need to capture also the culture, even if it is domain specific, for example, in law or in public administration. So all the evaluation data are coming from American style law or public administration. So it's not just translating or even human translation. You need the expert to go into the equation and produce equally level the reasoning data for this particular language. So we need to ground culturally and the local knowledge of each language. Adding to that, for low resource languages, all kinds of data, apart from the evaluation data sets, are very important, depending on how many speakers and the availability of the data. If we have oral languages, then we need to find the closest ASR, conversational speech, and for transcribing and collecting, have a protocol for collecting oral speech. Could be from storytelling, and transcribe that properly, find the right transcription mechanism, and go on and on. So it depends on the readiness, the digital readiness of the languages. We need different approaches.
So it seems to me that in addition to that, there is actually a need for high quality, even if small, structured data. That basically goes into the architectures and how we actually build large language models. Fine. That's a question I guess we'll discuss later. But it turns out that in a lot of cases, building these smaller representations of what is actually important in a language and what are hooks to other languages can actually significantly help. If we look at the result of embedding algorithms, for example, on structured data, turns out that we can generate high quality embeddings with significantly smaller amount of data, which we could then inject really in the back end of those language models. So in addition to pure language resources in the sense of pure documents or data that can be treated statistically, it seems to me that actually having a good handle of semantics, knowing what things mean and what they do not mean, and injecting that into those representations, like multimodal embeddings or embedding alignment, would actually significantly help here as well. I mean, I think it's an opportunity in the sense that creating these resources demands significantly less time than creating larger corpora, which you can then inject in encoder, decoder type models.
Okay, great. So I think Dagmar mentioned something which is very important about the fact that models often end up over-focusing on the English data or the large language data because it's available. So the question is it just that we don't have enough data, or is there something fundamentally wrong about the architecture of modern NLP that makes it focus too much on English? And maybe I'll leave Dagmar, as you already mentioned this.
Sure, yeah, that brings us back to the first tokenizing on English, and then you have that fixed subword vocabulary, which is a massive problem that we might come back to later, talking about tokenization inequality in general. There's also the problem of you only have that many parameters, no matter how much you scale, you still have a limited parameter space. And then throwing in all these languages automatically leads to some kind of problem that isn't exactly cross-fertilization, but potentially reducing they're kind of competing for the capacity of the language model, and then the low resource languages usually lose. The model size as such is also an issue, because I think that we need to have models that are also usable by low resource language communities. Otherwise, it's very difficult to engage communities. So I think we need to change the perspective here, but I can say more about that later. The mixture of experts models were already mentioned. They tend to create their own language bias, actually. So if you don't really group them by language family or have some very smart way of using it, there is this tendency or this, danger of them actually introducing yet another language bias. And the quantization and compression methods have also been shown to actually disproportionately degrade performance for low resource languages. So I think there are a lot of things that we need to consider in the current way that we handle the models in order to enable low resource languages better.
Who else would like to come on this question?
Okay. May I add? I agree with Dagmar that is okay. Tokenization. You start with tokenizing, so we need the efficient multilingual tokenizers. So it's not just biased to English, but you need to have a good fertility rate in other vocabularies, languages, and alphabets. And this is very important, not only for for semantic representation, but also for cost effectiveness. Depending on the data that we have in different languages, we need to make a plan of how we mixture this data, and this is important also for knowledge transferring from one language to another, the most dominant to the less dominant. Again, so you need experimentation before starting and the actual plan. And all this new world of AI training with the LLM is capital intensive. You need to have a budget and define the budget beforehand. So in order to see how much computational resources you will be using, depending on the how large is your LLM, and how large are your data. So before doing anything, you need to do a planning and make these design decisions about the outcome. And of course, at the last stage, which is evaluation data set, is very important, because at all stages you do evaluation and you look at the model, how it learns throughout, the whole procedure. So you do need good evaluation data and the abilities that you would like to your actual LLM at the end to have.
If I may, it seems to me that there's more to it, in the sense of if I understand the current contributions, the premise is that we keep the architectures that we've been working with so far to build these larger language models. And I think that's basically a fundamental problem that we need to address. I'm pretty sure those architectures actually do not capture what we need them to capture efficiently. So we need to inject a lot of data in there to actually get anything that makes sense. Whilst there are resources that were created using good old NLP, dictionaries and the like, which we could actually exploit to inject semantics way faster. So it seems to me that we actually do need to go back to the drawing board a little bit and think, okay, those old, quote unquote, old resources, can we actually reuse those directly as injecting them as semantic support to what we see in more statistics-driven models? Looking at that could actually improve the access to several languages.
Okay. I agree with this take and what Dagmar said about how it's really the perspective that needs to change. It's not so much there are known biases of the transformer, right, and subword modeling. We know how it is unfair to some languages, but because of how we work always with English first and then start thinking about other languages, there are also probably unknown biases, right? And we discover them along the way as we deal with more languages. So there needs to be a fundamental flip in how we do multilingual NLP, not as an adaptation of what we did for English, but thinking about multilingual quality from the get-go and revisiting all of the design choices that we make along the way, not using English only. So I really think, we need to think about these architectures quite differently.
Yeah, so I think a very good point there that was raised by Dagmar and several others is about this unfairness of the tokenization and the fact that if you speak a less resource language, it's going to cost you more tokens and therefore more actual real money to converse with an LLM that language. So what can we do to make large language models fair to speakers of less resource languages? So Dagmar,
May I start on this? Yeah. So Vasily mentioned we need a good fertility rate. I disagree. I think we need to go completely away from this idea of subword tokenization, which will be unfair to other languages, agglutinative languages, without any question, no matter what we do. There's some recent studies that go back to byte level encodings, character encodings. Not sure this is the right answer, but at least it is one answer that addresses low resource languages, where you say, okay, there used to be this problem with byte level encodings that the generation reliability is not given. But I think now there are some approaches that tend to solve this or are more, refined on this. So I think we really need to change the way that tokenization is being done. Starting with the idea that subword tokenization is the right way forward. Whatever it's going to be, whether character encoding or something else, I think it needs to be more morphologically inspired.
I agree with this. The problem with bytes is also that they're unfair. They're still unfair, right? Because the UTF-8 system is very much European biased. But there are solutions to this, right? There are modifications to UTF-8. So byte could be part of the answer. I still don't think that bytes are a meaningful unit of representation. So I don't like them so much. There's characters, there's also images, right? I don't know if you've seen the pixel-based work, which I was a part of at the time, thinking it would just be another baseline, something to try. And in the meantime, I've been convinced that if we want to build a multilingual model, then maybe images is the way to go, because that gets rid of this vocabulary bottleneck, which will always have if we build a multilingual model. But one thing I would like to challenge, which I'm not finding from this panel so far, is there seems to be an assumption that what we need is multilingual models. And I think multilingual models are great and we should definitely not abandon them, but we should also think about small monolingual models or models for carefully selected selections of languages. There's been some progress in small language models, and I think for some low resource languages, the small monolingual language models may be the way forward, or at least part of the way forward. I don't think we should only focus on multilingual models.
So if I may.
Yeah.
No, please start. Go ahead. No problem.
I think with tokenization, byte representation or character representation, actually we don't have behind the scenes everything is numbers. Okay, so even semantic representation linguistically or through the alignment of humans, it comes at the top of the whole engine. So if we need to be cost effective, then we need to have, I said fertility, because this is the very important factor for cost effectiveness. Now, I agree that we can have monolingual or specific domain small language models, but again, there you need to have enough resources to produce this small language model, and the ability will not be as there will not be as performant as the big large language model. So semantic representation, I think there are several works that they focus on how you can do tokenization with keeping semantics inside from languages, but still they haven't proven yet that models trained on these are more efficient than otherwise.
So, yeah, it seems to me that yeah, there's progress being made in tokenization. Obviously, it's not the non-plus ultra solution, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be difficult to find the non-plus ultra solution which solves those problems. So it seems to me that we actually need to look at several aspects, including morphological analysis, including basically what used to be linguistic parsers and the like, to actually introduce as much information as we can from the get-go, because we do have a lot of information, even for low-resource languages, that people write their whole PhD on the grammar of a language which is spoken by 20,000 people, and we should simply be able to take that data and put it in there. So it seems to me that that's actually step number one, leverage what we use, and there's really, really good work being done, even by single individuals, on very, very specific languages, which we should be able to reuse. And on small language models, totally with you there. There is small language models are a great idea in an environment where only that language is spoken, but it turns out that in a lot of areas where we have these low resource languages, people are forced, one way or the other, to actually deal with several languages at the same time. So there again, it seems to me that selecting regional clusters of languages, and sometimes they're not even related, is probably the way to go here.
Okay, good. So I'll keep moving on quickly. So actually, I want to go back to Axel, because one of the other things is it beyond tokenization? Is there something about the transformer architecture that we need to change? And I know you've mentioned mixture of experts models several times, but is there something like transformers? Do we need some kind of new innovation in terms of the architecture of the model beyond just the tokenization?
Yeah, I think we need models that are able to take the statistical aspects of basically dealing with large amounts of data, actually with structured representations of knowledge. Because as I said, some people have actually spent a lifetime really modeling out what makes out a language, what makes out a grammar of the language, and the like. And it's something that transformers are really bad at actually modeling properly. There's been a lot of work done, for example, in the area of knowledge graph embedding. So actually structured embeddings goes beyond knowledge graphs. And this idea of actually taking these more statistics inspired models and models that are actually based on a structured representation, bring them together, seems to me to be the most viable path that we have at the moment. So I would definitely go for, yes, we need a new architectures. And I think there should be neurosymbolic, basically to combine both aspects.
If I may, I would like to agree. I mean, after all, this is GOBLIN, multilingual knowledge graphs kind of cross section. So yes, definitely. I also agree in general that combining kind of symbolic prior representations with neural representations is a very interesting path to follow for low resource languages. I also think that there has been some work on this that is actually interesting for Turkmen, for Kazakh, how you can combine something like a finite state transducer, conditional random fields, and a neural language model to do morphological analysis, to do text correction, to do all sorts of things, on small models. So I think that's a very interesting way to move forward, to go into this kind of neurosymbolic direction. I also think that the image idea is very interesting as a basic representation, especially for speech models, right? I don't know whether you were working on speech, but I think for that it's a very promising path forward to go away completely from text and train speech models without text or with a minimal amount of text and basically ground the representation on visual signals, which also has been shown to work quite well. So I find this very interesting, and I think there are lots of things we should explore instead of just trying to scale or make small changes to systems we have.
So I might move on from
Really
the technical. Oh, maybe you want to come in?
Sorry, I just wanted to agree that just one point about the speech that that I really hope that someone does that. I'm not familiar with speech, so but this is something that's definitely should happen. And just a general agreement with the neurosymbolic approaches, because for many languages we do have data that is symbolic, right? We have these grammars. I mean, that's also what Axel said, right? We have these grammars and we have these typological feature databases like GramBank that are evolving and getting better. And for a lot of languages, we have data, but we don't have any unannotated or annotated data. And the frame of mind, the current frame of mind is to try and get as much raw or annotated data as possible, and not thinking about symbolic data at all. And if we change that frame of mind, then that's where we'll see actual progress for low resource languages. I believe that.
Okay, good. So I think one thing that we've talked about there being 7,000 languages in the world, but a vast majority of that 7,000 are languages which lack standardized writing systems, that are primarily oral languages and are rarely written. So what can language technologies do for these non-standardized and oral languages? And I think I'll start with Vasilis, because I know you already mentioned something in this direction.
Yeah. I mean, we have done some work on dialects or idioms, even in Greece, and it's very important to collect data and have the community engaged in this process. So you do need to have data collection of oral speech, of oral data. And this is, you have to have relations to the community, to the regions, to find the speakers from different generations or social contexts. And beyond that, you need to start, apart from the collection of data, you need to have in place some dirty, ready transcription system, just to put in the loop and produce more data. If you want to go for to encapsulate that in an LLM, otherwise you have to spend a period of time of collecting data and do the work that are taken for granted in other languages. So one thing is collecting data and building some basic speech and text technologies, not with LLM, but with classical, NLP or speech technologies like ASR.
Anyone else like to come in on this? Okay, so another thing I think we also mentioned was that, a lot of these AI firms, they rely on scraping vast amounts of resources from the web without any regard to its source. So particularly for minoritized communities, this can feel kind of intrusive and against their data sovereignty. So how do we encourage more data sovereignty for speakers of minoritized languages? Axel?
I think that's one of the toughest questions you basically asked, because on the one hand, we actually want to build technology for those languages, which means we need access to those languages, right? So if we don't have access, we can't build anything. On the other hand, yes, it is. It becomes a very ethical question as to, does a language really belong to a community or not? So does English belong to the British or the Americans or whatever? That becomes really tricky. But it seems to me that we basically need data laws, and we need to basically have data laws which are decided upon by the people who speak the language, by the people who generate the data. And those data laws should simply, number one, be agreed upon, number two, be followed. And we should basically allow for each community to simply decide how they want that data to be really dealt with and taken care of. Seems to me to be the fairest way to go about this, but I'm not a lawyer, so that's just my very biased opinion on the subject matter.
I think that's the problem. There's very little control we have over the right thing to do over here, because we can't just forbid the AI firms to scrape web data. So what can we do as AI technologies who are not going to change the law, unfortunately? I've always been in favor of open sourcing all data, but now I'm thinking we might need to actually rethink that. And talking about evaluation data again, which we mentioned earlier, the way forward might be to actually keep evaluation data away and have like platforms. Like I don't know if you've used these platforms for shared tasks sometimes, where you can upload your model on a machine, and so you don't see the data, but you can you know what structure it has, and then you evaluate on that data without ever seeing it. And maybe this is the way forward now, instead of actually putting the evaluation data out there, having it to be protected, but still making it easy to evaluate on these languages, because otherwise people are just not going to do it. People are just not going to evaluate on your language if it requires too many extra steps.
I agree that the communities need to decide about the control and the ownership of the governance of the data. They still have to make these decisions depending on to allow commercial use or non-commercial use. And this is also very tricky, because at some stage, if they allow commercial use, their language will survive in this digital world. Otherwise, it will not encapsulate in the large systems, and will be only for the open weight community. So there are many factors that they need to take into account, like all communities, but we need to be sincere with those people and talk to them about quantity and quality of the data needed for these systems to be ready to be trained in their own languages.
Okay, great. So I think that brings us to the next question, which is, how do we, as NLP developers, involve speakers of low resource language in the development of these technologies and in the development of LLMs and other NLP tools that would affect them?
I would like to start on that one, if I may.
Yeah,
In my view, the most important aspect here is to reframe the whole subject, the whole topic, because it's really not about data. It's really not about how can we get more data from different communities, which I think is the wrong approach. I think it's a societal problem, to be honest. So how can we involve more speakers by empowering them? So the question is not where can we obtain more data for training our own models, but how can we build the societal and institutional structures that lead to communities to build their own NLP systems? And there's this fantastic initiative, for instance, called Maslakana. That's like an NLP community for Africa by Africans. And there the goal is completely to enable the community to build their own low resource language technologies, which I think is the best way forward, to really not try to get more data. On the other hand, we have someone here who is, I think, kind of in the audience. I just saw a question pop up before. Elvin Huaman has been working on this, for instance, for Quechua, which is a language that could not in many definitions be considered low resource because there are many speakers, but it is definitely a low resource language within the machine readable paradigm. So there are not enough resources. And he's also been working with communities to build structured resources, to really build a lot of, semantic resources, which we then could use, of course. So I think, yes, you could try to involve communities by in-community members in the research project. Otherwise, I think it's not a very reasonable attempt. Or you could really try to change the paradigm and say it's a societal problem. They should build NLP. They should feel ownership over the whole topic and should be involved in the research in any case.
So I totally agree with what you just said. There's just a little bit of a practical problem there. So my parents speak a bunch of low resource languages, and actually getting the resources to do your own NLP on those languages is quasi impossible. I mean, if you go to the far villages in the middle of Cameroon and you start trying to tell people, oh, there is natural language processing, they basically have other problems. So it seems to me that yes, we need societal incentives to do that, but we also need to be bold enough to simply go ourselves. And really collect the data. But the question is, what data do we collect? And I think we also need a different approach as to what we collect. I know it goes back to having structured data, but I'm not somebody who did linguistics in the sense of basically language linguistics. I did computational linguistics, but it seems to me that linguists actually have been doing that for a while. They actually know how to collect structured information about languages efficiently. So it seems to me that we need to look at it not only from a, let's say, more CS view on languages, but also from the view of linguists and say, can we actually work together as to create means to collect the necessary data efficiently, structural representations, in addition to all what you said before, Dagmar, that's absolutely correct, basically involving the community. So providing tools on the one hand, providing tools that allow to gather information, gather semantics efficiently, in addition, and involve the community to actually make that happen.
But I think there can be a problem here because this sounds to me like you're promoting this extractive data collection. I don't know if you're familiar with the work of Stephen Bird, who advocates against this type of data collection, where we're not. So the first the first question to ask a community is if they even want their data to be extracted and for what usage. And so there's this line of work that is trying to it's not just letting the communities build their own resources, but talk to them to see what they need and what they want. And so in our own work, we've done this, for example, for some Creole languages, where we try to reach out to communities and ask what the communities actually need. And there's really diverse needs where some communities do not want, for example, spell checkers, because they say it makes me feel like what I write is incorrect when I want to write in different ways. There's not one way to spell correctly, and it really depends on the community what data is needed. And so I think it's important when you're doing data collection to actually also make sure that this is not just extractive in the sense that you're going to use that for your own benefits. But that this will actually also benefit the community.
So I was definitely not arguing for extractive approaches in no way, shape, or form, just to be very clear about that. What I meant is involving the community, but giving them the necessary tools to actually make that which should happen. Because I agree with Dagmar there. If we just want to say, this is what we want to do, and this is how you are to do it, that might actually not allow the community to actually give in only the portion that they want to give in. I mean, there are things like, if you take Bamileke languages, for example, there are secret parts of the language that they do not want communicated to the outside, because those symbols mean something ritual, or they mean something only within a certain family lineage. And hence, give them the tool, be there to support, but don't enforce anything. I hope that clarifies my semantics.
Actually, for my next question, I was thinking of Stephen Bird's research and his work on decolonizing language technologies. And I think this is a very important thing, as ask how can we develop NLP technologies in a way that don't erase the culture and don't continue to support sort of colonization and sort of the erasure of minoritized languages and minoritized communities. So I don't know if you want to carry on that point.
If we are talking about LLM, sorry, Miriam.
I just have a short point about this that has already been made, I think, but it's the first thing is to stop relying on translation so much for everything we do.
Okay, I agree. don't rely on translation. But you know, especially after the first stage where you learn to predict the next token, so it's very important to have native instruction data and preference data for the alignment, and there you will have, you know, you will see the model moving towards grounding, cultural grounding. So if you have also dialectical examples, it's even better. You need evaluation, as we said before, and you need also evaluation by humans. So apart from the benchmarks, evaluation by humans is very important, by native speakers, of course, not by any. So I think this is important for this not to be able to erase the culture of the idioms of the language.
I think this question brings up a very important aspect that we have only touched upon lightly, which is who actually takes the main choices, who selects the training method, the design choices, the training materials, and so on, which is the only and main reason why LLMs are said to think in English, in my view. So I believe this kind of bias that's being introduced by large proprietary AI models and by the associated firms is the main issue here. So I think we need to have alternative approaches of training models in order to develop NLP or LLMs that are, or other actually technologies that are more controlled also by other communities and other providers. And the question is, of course, also who decides on what is culturally racist, who decides on what is culturally appropriate and so on, which is really, as Vasilis was saying, an evaluation matter. And this is like a very big, you know, aspect and problem. This is not an objective yes, no, or, you know, this is not a very objective matter. So I think here there needs to be some more acknowledgement that we need something beyond benchmarking as we have it right now.
Okay, good. Okay, so I'm going to close out with two sort of more general questions. So first of all, question is sort of, you know, what do you advise for activists and speakers of low resource languages to do in order to improve the status of their language or the support of their language of modern language technology? So how do we help activists of less spoken languages? What should activists do? I mean, is a question, sorry.
Produce their own data, not machine generated, but human generated digital data. So write naturally as much as possible, publish your opinion, write stories, try also to have oral or speech data in podcasts, in communications like we have today in your own language. So try to write domain-specific terminology languages, either is public domain, public administration, or health, or scientific knowledge, and try to produce terminology in your own language. And only this way you will. I mean, this is a message not only for low resource language, because now with the invasion of LLMs, we see machine generated digital content out there. So if we want the human thinking to survive, you know, in the next generations, we need to take, you know, we may use, you know, LLMs, but to have our own ownership and expressivity in the way we are writing scientific text, personal communication in our job in every way.
I have a short answer. Let the community's own sense of what matters drive research priorities and initiatives.
It seems to me that it's also a job to develop technology that can thrive even on small amounts of data. Basically rethink the way we actually do language processing to be more data efficient.
Exactly, that would be my take also. Like, look at small language models and efficient solutions.
Okay, great. Thank you. So I think my final question is just, I'll go around the panel and ask you kind of what is one major misconception that you'd like to dispel today about language technologies and low resource languages? So I'll go clockwise, start with Miriam.
Well, I already mentioned it, I guess. For me, the major misconception is that all you need is cross-lingual transfer, because I think that, like I already mentioned, I think this helps only a handful of low-resource languages and not the majority of our languages.
Okay, thank you. And Dagmar?
That low resource automatically means dying language or few speakers, and that it's automatically a community, which frequently it's not. It's spread geographically. So there are some languages that have, several million speakers, such as Quechua, such as Yoruba. There are several of those examples. So I think that's the biggest misconception. And there you need to consider that it's not, coherent community that you address. And you should probably, consider that you need to address a lot of different communities for a low resource language.
Okay, thank you. And Vasilis?
I agree with both that actually the low resource languages that are lacking resources, they need to the communities to decide on which digital support they need, and from that develop their own ecosystem.
And Axel?
That we can use the same technologies that we use for high resource languages to actually go process low resource languages. I think we need to rethink that.
Okay, great. Thank you. So those are the questions that I prepared in advance. So I think we'll move now on to the second part of this this panel, which is questions from the audience. So I'll just read out what's in the chat. So if you do have further questions, please put them in the chat and let's go over them. So our first question is, what about languages such as Albanian that have their own branch of Indo-European, I guess? Do we just need more data, or can LLMs even help in creating corpora?
I would
Both.
definitely say not. I was going to say that I think synthetic data is really not the answer, because you create the same biases that are in the model. So I think synthetic data is overused as a solution. But I don't think Albanian is an extremely low resource language. I don't know the specific case.
Well, talking about synthetic data, there are many ways of producing good quality synthetic data, or actually, native speaker synthetic data when it comes to instruction or to for alignment data. For producing, raw content, of course, it's not a way to go, or through translation. So it's better to collect or spend time to digitize from OCR, authentic content, speed, language, textual languages, and then from that, or you can have from TV channels or radio channels and transcribe in Albania, create a corpus there, and from that use LLMs to produce, the other type of data like SFT for SFT and alignment, which is very expensive.
I guess the what about was related to the fact that Albanian is like the only language in a particular language family, LREC or something, if I recall correctly. And I guess that's fundamentally what the question was pointing at. But my suggestion would be that the solution that were solutions in the plural that were pointed out for low resource languages hold here as well. So make the data available, make sure that the community makes data available in the way that they want the data to be available so that it can be then processed by the corresponding fitting tools.
I think it's also important to start transferring data from other fields that might not for now be considered for training, such as linguistic field work, where you have, phonetic transcriptions, where you have cognate databases, all sorts of very classical linguistic research, but they're just not available in a format that they're being used for training right now. So to really see all the kinds of data that are there for Albanian and see how they could potentially be used for building, Albanian NLP technologies.
Okay, thanks. I'll skip the comments that look a bit more like comments rather than questions. So next question is, realistically, how good can any model for a low resource language be, especially compared to high resource languages, and under which requirements? So can we expect low resource languages to be at the same level as high resource languages eventually?
It really depends on what you use. It depends on the definition of good, which is already a very, very dodgy question to answer. But it also depends on how you actually train your model. So I think eventually, if we look at the way children acquire language, there is no way they read trillions of tokens to be really, really efficient at a language, right? So this idea that we need trillions of tokens to actually train to have a good model is probably erroneous, which then means that we actually need better ways to train digital models to actually learn languages. And it seems to me that the answer is yes, but not with the current technology. So yes, models can be as good on small languages as on large languages, but not with the technology we use today.
I agree with that, and I think it's going to take a long time to change the technology in a way that bridges the gap. And it would take a major reframing of how we do things.
Okay,
Yeah,
great.
cross language, transfer of knowledge is still there in the large language models. So you need good alignment with the dominant languages if you want to have, reasoning or other capabilities. I agree with Axel that what is the good model. If you want to be fluent in a language, then you have to have benchmarks in these languages and from native speakers and see the fluency level.
I think it's actually a mistake to to try to represent low resource languages in a way that they're aligned with the high resource languages, because that would mean they need to be aligned with the high resource culture and values, which I think is not the way to move forward. I would really rather go for the small monolingual models or small language family based models than to try to address this problem or the gap with large language models.
Okay, great. So the next question is, given that cultural bias introduced by transfer methodologies from high resource languages is inevitable, is it preferable to accept and manage this bias until more linguistic resources become available? Or could such biases be characterized and prioritized according to their impact on downstream tasks?
Well, bias is coming from the developers. I mean, they are deciding what kind of data they will give and the culture and the behavioral characteristics they will give to the actual outcome that we are using. It's not so this bias is decided. I mean, if you take Grok, first you have to ask Elon and then to reply to the user. So it's the cultural alignment that is very important, and it's not about knowledge transfer in this case.
And I do think there is no one fits all type answer to this question. It really depends on what the model is supposed to be used for. So if you consider a model that's mostly used for banking transactions, for example, then it's mostly about resources, things are well defined. And yes, you could basically live with some amount of bias. But if you think about a model that's supposed to serve, say, in a hospital where small nuances make a big difference, I would suggest to be very careful then with just assuming that biases are okay. So it really depends on the use case.
Okay.
I think that it would be good to invest on the second part of the comment, like, should we try to characterize the bias based on a downstream task? I think that's a good idea, actually. And I think more research, not just on bias as some kind of abstract concept related to religion or culture or ethnicity. We should have a lot more culture-specific bias research, I think. It would be interesting to see how it impacts different downstream tasks. I don't think that there is enough research on that yet.
Okay. Great. So the next question we have is, do we have a better chance of progressing with dialects of high resource language, such as English dialects, or low resource languages, such as modern Greek? So I think this was the question about oral non-standardized languages. So does it make a difference whether it's a well-spoken dialect, well-spoken language?
It makes a difference
Absolutely.
to the population, to the communities that they are spoken, how they organize and they collect it, or they share their own, they produce their own resources. So there are some, at least in Greece, there are some dialects that are only spoken by 3,000 native speakers, and the age population is above 60. So even if you want to go to the communities and collect data from 30s or 40s, you don't find this population. And you have other dialects that through different means of songs, music, they have survived. And they keep, these particular characteristics in their pronunciation and also their vocabulary. And for these languages, because the communities are very vital, it's easier to collect data and produce models for this data. I guess more or less the similar will be with English dialects.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess I understood the question, sorry, completely differently. For me, the question was if it's easier to develop NLP for languages that have related high resource languages or dialects. So for me, the answer is quite clearly yes to that. But that's I might have misunderstood the question.
They're both valid interpretations of the question, right?
My understanding to the question was a dialect from the Greek and a dialect from English. So it's that was the answer I gave.
Good. Yes. Okay, super. So the next question is the solution going forward in large scale human annotated data, since we can't rely on translation of low resource languages? Is that a solution?
I think this has been mentioned already, right? That community efforts like Masakane, or I would also mention universal dependencies, are indeed part of the solution. Collecting authentic data from the communities, that's part of the solution. Yes.
Is it a practical solution though for all languages?
No, I would say no.
No.
I would go back to what Axel was saying, and I would promote the same. We might want to consider other representations of language data, such as structured representations or other options, because it's not realistic that we're going to get large-scale human annotated data for any low resource, for every low resource situation.
Okay, good. I might rephrase Fahad's comment into a question. So, as some low-resource languages are spoken by millions of people, is it really possible to speak of a community of these language speakers?
That's a tough and a very good one. Turns out that, yes, some languages that are highly fragmented actually diversify. So you basically get a bunch of dialects being spoken, and what the original is tricky to use in this context. But basically, it's actually hard to tell what the consensus language should look like. But we see that in English as well, and we've been able to make that happen for the English language. So it's not like a phenomenon we're not familiar with. So it goes back to what we were saying before. With the right toolage and the right approach, I think we can cater for that as well. But it's a super interesting phenomenon.
Okay, good. So another comment here. So LLMs are much better in low resource languages like Greek than small LMs. So the two questions here are language specific models, which are smaller LLMs like GPT. Could there be smaller models that have significantly better performance? And is the problem the model size? That is the right size, I guess, for a small language model? So Miriam, you were
Yeah, so I think first of all, I wouldn't call Greek a low resource language. I mean, it's all relative, right? Compared to English, every language is low resource. I don't know if you've seen the Joshi category. I don't know where Greek falls in, but I would imagine that it's in the top categories. Anyway, the small language models are better than LLMs for some languages. There are papers that are starting to show that. And I think we're back to this tokenization issue. A small language model can be better than a multilingual LLM for a language where that is completely mistokenized by a multilingual LLM because it has seen too little of its data. It's representing too few tokens in its vocabulary. So I think this is really the determining factor. So for Greek, it's probably well represented in multilingual language models, as in the vocabulary represents Greek well, so it's doing better than small language models. But other languages are much, for example, I keep coming back to this Amharic example, which is its own distinct script, sorry. And so a multilingual LLM does very poorly on Amharic because it just doesn't know how to tokenize it. And so it just sees a bunch of unks, so it cannot do anything with it. And so you can build a better small language model for such a language quite easily. And so is the problem, I'm not sure I understand the question of if the problem is the model size. I mean, I do think size is a part of the solution, and that small language models by definition can never be great. But is it I'm not sure if it makes sense to talk about a problem. So I'm just not sure I understand this question.
Yeah, we have to specify what is a small language model and what is a large language model. I mean, okay, we have released, a model that was based on Llama 3.1, and it was with continuous pre-training with a new tokenizer for Greek, and we do all the mixture of data mixture for not forgetting English, but also transferring from English to Greek, and the result is a new model that is more capable than the one that was based in both English and Greek. And this is actually, we did that because we took care some particular tricks in the training pipeline. But if we are talking about commercial LLMs, then you cannot. You compete with the size, and there I agree that with Miriam, it depends on how much data they have seen in Greek and how these are aligned, or there is transfer of knowledge from English to Greek otherwise.
Okay, yeah, and I will also say Amharic is something we've seen in our research, where it does seem to cause a lot of particular problems, perhaps because of the Gares script. Okay, cool. So move to the next question. So I think the major misconception right now is that more data is needed. Most of the time, the right step is evaluation, not just continuing to gather more data. The big question is, are the available data well evaluated? Are they well represented? Are they clear enough? So I would like to answer that question.
I'm not sure I understand, because for evaluation you need data, right? But I do think that the problem is not just in the data we have to evaluate. It's we already talked about translation, but also about the multilingual NLP data sets have a clear Eurocentric sampling bias. And so one solution to that is we've developed a sampling framework that takes typological diversity into account. And so I think that allows for better informed evaluation practices. That is one step towards a better evaluation. I don't know if that answers the question, because I'm not sure I understood it exactly.
Yeah, I'm also not sure I totally understand the question, but it seems to me that the answer to is the data well represented is probably no. We've been talking about the tokenization issue, but also the problem of actually exploiting all the resources which are out there. Whether data is clear enough is actually hard to tell, but what we do know is that we do have data out there which describes the structure of languages which we don't exploit, and whether available data is well evaluated, I guess is well used. I hope that that's what's intended, and the answer would probably be no.
It depends on how much. I mean, the developers they decide on the mixture of data and the quality of the data they put in the training set. So so the educational factor, I mean, is very important. What sort of data, especially if you are scraping the web, you are keeping, what sort of filtering you are doing. If you put social media data, for example, or if you want to have filters that throw away some biases already in the data. On the other hand, I mean, this is how clear they are and how they well represented. If we have different xenons in the data set, so it's first you scrape everything, then you do a lot of work on classifying in different xenons. You have the quality factor in place, and then you see the result that is for every decision you take, you have the result of a data mixture.
Okay, great. So I'll also do another rephrasing a statement into a question. So data collection does not arise from nothing, but emerges as a perceived need after a long process of acclimatization to a given technology or a given language and community. How can that process of acclimatization be facilitated for low resource communities so that the principles of data acquisition would follow from it?
That's a dodgy one for somebody who is not a sociologist or the like, but it seems to me that providing adequate toolage, whatever adequate is, that's really hard to define, is the way to go. If you want people to actually who quote unquote own the language, who are native speakers of the language, to communicate resources, they need ways to make that happen, right? And the easier it is for them to do that, the better. Having said that, the social part, I'm not the right person to ask.
Yeah, it's definitely a tricky question. Okay, good. So next question is it realistic to aim for general purpose model for low resource language, or better to aim for domain specific applications? Example is Bulgarian law.
I would say both. Like we need language diversity as much as we need domain diversity. I don't think they're mutually inclusive.
Well, if you go to Bulgarian law, then you need to have, to know all the laws in Bulgarian, do the specific application, downstream task you would like. But they do need to produce, to know the style of language. So you may need to have some pre-training, states. Depend on the model you are trying to use. So better to decide on the model, evaluate the model of the language first, and then decide on the actual steps forward.
Okay, good. So next question from the audience was, are multilingual architectures the answer for good low resource model performance? And if so, is it one high resource language like English or multiple low resource languages?
I mean, I believe we discussed this at length already during the panel discussion. I think there was kind of a consensus that a good idea is to have either monolingual or language family-based language models rather than this one monolithic general purpose multilingual architecture.
I guess that
Yeah.
you're absolutely right. We did
So go ahead,
discuss that,
Axel.
especially because we said English in and of itself is basically so predominant in the data at hand. But if we were to assume that we had the same distribution of data of our languages, so I guess it would be fine to actually go with more than just language families, because we will not have this dominance. So problem is basically the distribution, right? But I absolutely concur. Given the current technology that we had, it seems to me that actually having a certain amount of compactification really does help.
Okay, good. The next question is, what do we need from research and industrial advancements to achieve decent performance for low resource language models?
Everything. There are many advancements out there. I mean, you have to take advantage of anything that is. I mean, the production of research and experimentation that people are really doing. They do amazing job, and you can find many tricks in different domains. How you can use not multilinguality, but multimodality to improve the textual modality. So there are many tricks that you can use from research and industrial advancement, and especially from the industrial advancement. It's very important that when you want to have the same abilities, the capabilities of the model, and reduce the size, or you have to the same throughput in terms of tokens, and not lower the performance of the model.
Okay. Good. So next question is, in your knowledge and perspective, which low resource languages have the greatest chances of having good performing language models, and why?
Those where there are most initiatives, most support from research from other sources. I think that's the key.
I would say the
Also those
European
that
languages, the European language, because Europe is putting money right now. So
not
is a kind of investment. Sorry, Miriam.
no, it's not just about the money. I mean, but I keep repeating the same point. But I think it's also about cross-lingual transfer, right? Since this is the major way that that we're getting improvements for low resource languages. If your language is related to a high resource language, then it will do better automatically.
But bear in mind that Europe is multilingual, by the constructions. So it's
well, yeah, but Europe is one of the least linguistically diverse areas, geographical areas of the world, right?
oh yes, of course.
So that's also a misconception. When I read
You're,
oh, Europe is so
you are
multilingual, actually, it's really not.
You are absolutely right.
Depends on how you look at it. If you see how much space, geographically speaking, and how many language you have in that space, I would absolutely say it is. Square meters and language diversity, definitely.
Okay, great. So the last question from the audience is, under a limited budget, is it better to annotate a small amount of highly diverse, high quality data or much larger but lower quality data set?
I think this
Go
is an
with
often,
quality.
yeah, this is an often research question, and I think the answer is consistently lower high quality.
You mean large amount of lower, or what do you mean?
I think it's, yes, quality versus quantity in data annotation is, I think, the question.
It seems
And
that
the
with
ans-
current technology,
and the
you need
answer is
large
what?
amounts, right? Do you think so? So, I mean, before a certain threshold. No, please go ahead.
I mean, the point is also there. There's a curve, right? And there's a curve where quantity and quality sort of meets, but a very small amount of quality data will give you nothing. But you need only a small amount to do better than a very high amount of low quality. And there's really a lot of research showing that if you filter out half of the data, then you get the same performance based on quality.
Absolutely.
If you do this filtering. So that
Absolutely
was
with
the
you.
point I was trying to make.
So I think there is basically a threshold. Before that, if you just don't have enough data to trigger anything vis-a-vis the learning, so if it basically looks like noise, it doesn't get you anywhere. But past that threshold, basically quality becomes super important. Look, I don't know, maybe you guys know of a work that looks at where that threshold is. I don't know of any work that does that, but that'll be quite interesting.
What we did in example of a dialect, a Greek dialect, which is very low sourced, and we took some spoken data. We have the community annotate that, transcribe that, and then we took an ASR model that was closer to this dialect. So we tuned the ASR model, and then we produce more text from more transcribed from the original spoken data. So we start looping, going into iteration, training the machine with more data, having annotator cleaning the data with less time. So we keep doing that in iterations, and that produced, an amount of a substantial amount of data and good quality at the end of some technology.
There's also quite a bit of work in quite specific to dependency parsing, where we have a lot of data for a lot of different languages. And there are several papers with learning curve experiments where you see that compared to a multilingual model, a monolingual model that uses or a fine-tuned model that uses some amount of target language data quickly surpasses the multilingual model, like with hundreds of sentences or something like that. So the main takeaway I got from these papers is that it's quicker than you'd think, that a small amount of data surpasses data. Here is more like data from another language.
Okay, great. A couple more questions have come in, so we can keep going. This question is, imagine your mother tongue is dying. What would be the first steps to take to bring it into the digital world? What strategy to take? Is it data? What kind of data? What technology to focus on, and what next?
So I
I
know
would
of
say
some
that this,
people who are doing that. Please, Dagmar, please go ahead.
no, go ahead.
So I know of some people are looking into that basically for some regional languages in Cameroon, and the strategy that they go for is actually writing down a dictionary and writing down a grammar because it's way more efficient. Oh, it's starting to rain here. It's way more efficient than trying to produce a lot of text that can then go into an LLM. To me, it seems to be a logical way to go about doing that. It does not mean that we should not be producing texts or collecting resources that can go into an LLM, but actually keeping as much of the semantics well preserved as possible seems to be an efficient way to go about doing that.
I would like to say what I said before already, that it should really be driven by what the community thinks is most needed or what they'd be interested in, because then you can engage more of the people still speaking the language in the initiative than if you just try to tell them what kind of data you need or what kind of technology you need. So I think it should really also come from what speakers feel they could benefit from best, which is probably more successful as a strategy.
Okay, great. So another question is, should AI research aim to preserve linguistic diversity, or is it inevitable that multilingual foundation models will gradually homogenize language use?
Yes,
I
we
think we
should
should.
preserve language diversity. I mean, it's part of human culture. It's like basically saying we shouldn't study history. Actually, funnily enough, by studying languages, we actually understand how people thought, number one, but also what went wrong in some cases. There's a very, very interesting example of a language, and I forgot the name. I'm sorry. My memory for names is terrible. But that language has, I think, 20 different words for bovines. Those people do not hold cows. They are actually fishermen and women, and they actually live on fish. But one was actually able to reconstruct the displacement of those people, so of that particular culture, just by tracing basically how the different words evolved in that language. So yes, absolutely.
I just agree. I don't think we should be inevitable, be fatalist here. We cannot accept the homogenization of language. That would be too sad.
Yeah, definitely research should aim to preserve linguistic diversity. However, the way people are using the outcomes of research or development is a bit scary, and we may end up of this homogenization.
I mean, I'm personally interested in how the use of LLMs affect our speech and our language use. That's something that we're investigating right now, and it does, even a spoken language. For the written lexical diversity part, there are a lot of studies already that we all leverage and don't know, dive into everything right now in all research papers. But I think it also affects spoken language because of the overuse of LLMs. So yes, I'm not a fan of it. Sorry. So I agree with everyone else. I just wanted to add the fact that it's not just about which language, but even our English is being affected by language models already. So I'm absolutely not a fan of homogenization in any case.
And delve being one of these examples of a word that has suddenly spiked in usage since the introduction of ChatGPT. Okay, super. So I think that's all the questions from the audience. So maybe we've got a little bit of time left. We'll just go round again and you can have any closing remarks. So I'll just go back to say more than starting with Miriam.
I didn't prepare for closing words. What should I say? I mean, it was a very nice panel. So I think maybe to summarize my personal priorities, which I've highlighted in a few times, is not stop focusing only on cross-lingual transfer and think about neurosymbolic solutions. Think about small language models and not as an addition, so not exclusively think about multilingual models. work with communities towards to understand their needs. I think these are the important priorities moving forward.
Okay, Dagmar?
Yeah, I would agree that alignment and fine-tuning are not the answer. Transfer is not the answer. So we need to come up with either completely new radical solutions that work well for low resource languages. But in any case, I think what we should do is really connect to the communities more, change the way how we design research projects, and that we have the great ideas and we kind of go to the communities and they need to work with us, the more really let it come from the community, the research idea as such and what they need.
Vassils?
I think that in Europe there are many interesting initiatives in many aspects for the formal languages, which some of the languages are not they can be considered as low resource or in domain specific. So there are many initiatives and there are many challenges, and Europe has started investing in infrastructure, in data with the common language data space, and in some techniques, there are many different labs out there that are developing open weight multilingual or several languages or small or even larger models. I think, however, that there is still for dialects or for idioms that are not there yet. So the official languages may be there, but there are many non-official languages that are the cultural diversity, the linguistic diversity, and some of them are endangered. We need to see how the communities either produce for themselves digital data, and they make their own decisions about the future of their languages, but there is a lot of potential and sharing of technology that can be used for this purpose.
Finally, Axel.
Yeah, I just think we need to rethink how we reuse resources and do our best to reuse all the resources that are available pertaining to languages, and quite a few that are not statistical in nature, but more symbolic. So we do need to start thinking about that heavily.
Okay, great. So I think that's the end of this panel. Eleni, I don't know if there's anything else you want to say for this panel?
Thank you very much again. It was a very interesting discussion, very insightful, all the discussions and the points that you raised. I think it's a great opportunity for anyone working in low resource languages to get maybe more informed and also get your valuable insights around this. We're very grateful that we had you here today, and wish you all a great rest of the day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for all the work.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.